Floridian from Destin. Awesome.
Hi again, everyone, and welcome to today's panel discussion, Ask the Experts, Leveraging Virtual Ethnographies. I just want to go over a few housekeeping items before we get started. You'll see two different ways to communicate with us throughout the webinar. There's the chat box and the Q&A box. Please use the chat box for all technical issues related to the platform and the Q&A box for any questions related to the content of the webinar. With that, our panelists are going to introduce themselves and jump right into the discussion. Jennifer, Sarah, would you like to get started?
Let's do it. Let me share real quick. All right. There we go. Jen, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so welcome everybody. Thank you for spending time with us today. Sarah and I are here from Clearworks. We'll tell you about that in a minute. And our topic today is why virtual ethnography. So we're excited to dig into that, and hopefully we will give you some solid information to kind of walk away with. So Clearworks is an insights, innovation, and customer experience company. We do full service research for our clients, and we work across a number of industries. We like to say we've done everything from toilet paper to security software. So we do B2B and B2C. And we work with companies of all sizes, so startups through Fortune 500. And what we really love about what we do is the diversity in terms of what we see in terms of company size, our industries, and the type of customers that we get to meet on behalf of our clients. So if you don't know now, we love what we do. You'll feel that by the end. All right, let me just give you a little bit about myself. So I kind of fell into market research 17 years ago, which is hard to believe. I've been with Clearworks for that long. But prior to that, I sort of had a mixed bag of experience in management consulting, product development, product marketing, and marketing strategy. And I worked at startups, I worked at Fortune 500 companies. So I think, you know, my career path kind of led me to market research, but it's the same thing that I love about what I did previously. It's again, that diversity, you know, meeting lots of different customers, different clients, no topic is ever the same. So we're never bored. So I'm going to have Sarah just say a few words about herself.
Hi, Sarah Doherty. I have been with Clearworks since 2011, and one of the things that I've done in the time that I've been there is I tend to kind of take charge and take the lead when it comes to, you know, new methodologies and approaches to the work that we do. And I was looking back through all of our projects and the work that we've done over the years to try to figure out when we first started with virtual ethnographies. And the first one we conducted was a year after I started working with Clearworks. That was in 2012. So that's 8 years ago. We started with virtual ethnographies. And so we're excited today to kind of talk to you guys about where we made mistakes over the years. So some lessons learned, things not to do, give you some real tips and tricks that you can actually take away from this and actually implement if you're doing a virtual webinar, a virtual ethnography on your own. So Jen will get us started talking about virtual ethnographies and ethnographies as a methodology, and then she'll turn it over to me and I'll get down into the nitty gritty with you guys. Looking forward to it.
And one thing I would also say, kind of in the spirit of what Sarah said, we love to share. You know, we love what we do. We love to talk about research. We love to talk to other researchers about what they do, the clients that they experience. So, you know, we do that in a number of ways through webinars like this. We speak at universities and we do blogs on our Clearworks site. So we not only do we want to share with you, but we want to hear what you have to say too. So, you know, for Q&A time at the end, if you have something that's less a question and just more something to share with us, we would love to hear it.
Yep. All right, let's dive in.
Okay, so we are here to talk about virtual ethnographies, but I thought before we jump into that, let's kind of level set on what an ethnography is in the research world. That's probably familiar to a lot of people, or at least you've heard the term. But an ethnography, when you're doing research, is that you are learning about your consumers in person. So you're actually with them and you're learning through observation and interviewing. So not only are you asking them questions, but you're actually looking to see what they're doing. So obviously a huge element to ethnographies. And some examples of what we've done in terms of ethnographies, again, may be very familiar to you. In-home ethnographies are, you know, probably some of the biggest things that we've done. in this area. We've also done in-office ethnographies where we kind of follow business people, small business owners, large companies, whatever it may be, to learn about a topic. We've done shop-alongs, which again is another kind of classic ethnography. And then we've also gone, we call it, quote, on location. You know, obviously the huge element to an ethnography is a real life environment. So if you're learning about hikers and the backpacks that they want to use, that's where you're going to go with them. So those are some examples, and we'd love to hear, you know, your experience with those as well. All right. And why do we like ethnography? So again, the context of this is relative to other types of research methods. Why do we like ethnographic research? Well, obviously the hugest element is because we can observe people and their behaviors, but also their things. So obviously if you're on the phone speaking to someone in an interview context, or you have them come to a focus group facility, they're not going to load in all the items that they have at their house that are important to them or maybe relevant to them. So that's one of the reasons that we really like ethnographies. And then, you know, you obviously can see in the home, in the office, wherever it may be, how things actually are. You know, so let's say you're doing a cleaning study and they're telling you that their house is spotless, but you walk in and you see piles and you see dust, and that's really how it is. That's real life, and you don't want them to hide that or tell you something different in an interview. So you get to see that yourself. And then obviously, you know, if you're in the home or in the office, you get to see parts of their world that you may not otherwise have access to. And we have some examples later, you know, about studies on, you know, shaving your legs or, you know, doing your bedtime routine. But that's not the kind of thing that, again, you can kind of pick up and bring to a focus group facility. And then we talked about the observation piece, but it's something that, you know, they don't have to recount later what they've done. So if you're asking them to tell you about cooking dinner, you can actually see them cooking dinner. And again, it's in their environment, kind of to all the things I said before. They have their things. You have the actual access to them going into the pantry, grabbing something, yelling at their kids as they're trying to get through the task, whatever it might be. So those are why we like ethnographies. But today we're here to talk about virtual ethnography. So again, let's figure out what the difference is. So in our mind, at the heart of it, it's an ethnography. But the virtual element is taking it out of the in-person context and putting it online. So you would conduct it rather than walking into their house or into their office or hiking with them. You are doing it online through an online tool or virtual space, rather than in person. But you still have all the other elements of ethnography that we love. You have the observation, you have the ability to interview and ask them questions. But in this context, they're actually responding to you through different media, videos, photos, screenshots, text responses, whatever it might be. And so, you know, obviously we love virtual ethnographies, and we, throughout the time that we've been doing them, we feel like there are some benefits to doing virtual over in person that kind of gives them an edge depending on the context that you want. So, you know, we're saying that inaccessible aspects of a person's life are now accessible to you. And I was referencing, you know, someone taking a shower and shaving their legs or doing a nighttime bed routine. Those are the types of things that you're probably not going to pile into their bathroom with a researcher, a videographer, and a couple of client people. So that really gives you a chance to understand how they go through that process better than you would normally. We love the real-time aspect of it. You know, as we said, it's versus recounting it, or, you know, you make them cook dinner at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because that's when your in-person interview is. You now are allowing them to do it when it makes sense for them. We also love virtual because it allows you to follow a person over a longer period of time. You know, when we do in-person ethnographies, they're typically 90 minutes to 2 hours. For our virtual ethnographies, we typically do a 10-day period. I mean, it's flexible depending on what the purpose of the research is, but just that length of time allows you to do things that you wouldn't be able to do in person. And then, you know, another big reason is the virtual format the relationship then is between the consumer and the camera. And so it allows people to talk about maybe sensitive or personal topics that they wouldn't normally feel comfortable talking about. So we referenced the toilet paper or toilet tissue study. We've also done a sexual wellness study. And in both those cases, we chose a virtual format because the topic areas were sensitive. They got into areas that were things that they probably wouldn't want to talk to maybe to just a researcher, or definitely not in a group setting. And another thing that we kind of leverage when we do virtual versus in person is that you're basically collecting their private responses. As we said, it's that one-on-one relationship between them and the camera. But we also add in from time to time community collaboration and ideation opportunities. So not only will they be responding to your questions and things like that, they can also jump in and share their ideas, react to other ideas. So we're able to get that element as well that, again, you can't get if you're doing an in-home. And then finally, one of the other pieces is there's no geographic limitation to a virtual tool. And there's no time constraint. So we really do love that. You could do a nationwide mix from the US, you could do a global virtual ethnography study. And they're not set to a particular time. It's not noon on a Tuesday. It's whenever makes sense for what they're doing. So we really love that. And we find that it can drive the cost down quite a bit. All right. And then we wanted to kind of give you a sense for how a virtual ethnography works, in the sense of how is it different, than another research methodology you might use. So the things that are familiar, that you guys probably all deal with as researchers, is that you want to allow the methodology to be driven by the objective. So that doesn't change. You don't just grab a virtual ethnography and throw it in just because you think it's fun to do. You're doing it because it's going to help you learn what you want to learn based on your study objectives. And then similar to going into an in-home or an in-office or an interview, whatever it might be, you are going to create a guide for yourself. But in this instance, instead of calling it a discussion guide or an interview guide, you call it a series of exercises. So you create your exercises that ultimately serve as those questions and that you'll program later into your tool. And then in terms of recruiting and incentives, we've gotten a lot of questions about this over the years. They really are the same as in person. You're creating a screener, you're finding the right people for your study, and your incentives are relatively on par with what you might pay for other in-home or in-office ethnographies. But what we wanted to kind of highlight for you is what's different. So sort of, as we were talking about the interview guide, instead of a specific interview or discussion guide, you're creating exercises. So you create them and then you ultimately set them up and program into the platform so they can be accessed by the participants or your consumers. In terms of an interview guide, I would also add too that what we typically do is we'll grab a portion of the people who have participated in our virtual ethnography and we will interview them after the fact. So we do actually create an interview guide as a companion piece to the exercises. It may focus on a subset of what we wanted to learn. It may probe in one specific area, but it just allows us to kind of take a look at what we've learned and make sure we can tie up some loose ends before we close out the study. And then I think the other thing that's different is that, obviously when you're conducting, an interview or your in-home research, you're with that person for a set period of time. Maybe you'll have a debrief afterwards, and then ultimately that information gets analyzed into your report. It's similar with a virtual ethnography, but what you need to do as part of your consumers in the online tool is that you want to go in every day and you want to review their responses. You want to make sure that you're encouraging them to do the exercises, thanking them for their responses. And you also have an opportunity to then probe on specific areas. So maybe if their answers were a little light or you feel like there's some unanswered questions, you can respond to them and have them go back in and give you some more information. And then the final difference is the length of time. As I alluded to, we usually have studies run from about 10 days. And the method to the madness there, and again, this is lessons learned over the years, we like to include 2 weekends because it really does let people have plenty of time to finish. People are busy, they have competing priorities, they really want to be in your study, but they've got kids and work. So we give them plenty of time to be able to do what they need to do. All right, so we've been talking about these exercises. So I want to make sure that you guys have a sense for, what we're talking about. So a few examples of exercises we've used pretty commonly. One might be a day in the life. So we may ask the consumers to record themselves as they kind of move through their day. Record yourself driving your kid to school, record yourself making dinner, things like that. And so that's kind of the context that we ask them to do that exercise. Another exercise that we use pretty commonly is show and tell, because not only does that allow us to have the visuals and, we actually get to see and observe what's in their home, but they narrate with us too. So for example, we've done a gardening study where one of the show and tells was a garden tour, and they had to address a number of questions as they went through and showed us their garden and the plants that they chose and things like that. Another one that we use quite often is a home tour. Again, as you're thinking about observing, you want to have the context for, where they live and what their surroundings are. So we'll ask them to give us a home tour, and again, kind of narrate and maybe address some specific questions. We've also used this in a specific context of, the toilet tissue study included a bathroom tour. We wanted to see how they stored their bathroom, what other products they had around their bathroom, what brands they liked. So it was an opportunity to do that. And then I'd say the last pretty common exercise that we use is, online shopping, or just the ability to do screen capture of whatever they're doing online. So whether it's online shopping, or they're doing research for a product decision, whatever it might be, we ask them to record their activity online. And again, they're walking us through everything that they're doing. So not only do you have the websites they go to, but you have the rationale behind it. All right. And then, again, to give you a flavor for, you might be kind of scratching your head going, I'm not sure what they're doing. What kind of studies are they conducting? Well, here's some examples, and I'll give you a quick idea of the context we used as well. So I mentioned the gardening study. So this was a companion piece actually to, we did in-home ethnographies as well, because we wanted to go deeply in specific markets. But for the virtual ethnographies, we had, the gardeners take us on a tour. It was the show and tell that I referenced before. And obviously with gardens, you have such beautiful, pictures and videos and everything so visual that it really lent itself nicely to a virtual ethnography and having nice artifacts later. We also did a travel planning study virtually, and in which we asked people over the period of 10 days to plan their vacation. So every day we asked them if they could do one or two things relative to vacation planning. And in that, we got videos, we got text responses, we got the screen capture that kind of showed their process. And then the toilet tissue study, I think that's a good example for us of a sensitive topic where we thought it was really effective, to be able to see in their bathrooms, to really understand, how they felt when they had an issue with the toilet paper breaking or whatever it might be. So again, with that and the sexual wellness study, those are topics that we think are really a good match for virtual ethnography. And I'd say our last example is where we've used virtual ethnographies as a precursor to a customer co-creation session that we held. So we did a study with small business owners, and we really wanted to understand their back office challenges. And so what we had them do a week prior to the co-creation session was to come in and just have us follow them for them to articulate their challenges, something that really drove them crazy on a day-to-day basis. And we feel like it did two things for us. First of all, as researchers, we were able to see into their worlds before they came into the session with us. And then from the business owner perspective, they were primed and ready to go the minute they walked into that co-creation session. Their challenges were front and center, and they were really able to just dive in with us. So we really like using it in that context. All right. Go
So
ahead,
I'm
Sarah.
going to take over from, thank you for that, Jen. So I'm going to take over from here and kind of dive into some of the nitty gritty. I see a couple questions coming in the Q&A box, and those are things that will get addressed in my section. So, and then anything that we don't address, we'll get to at the end. So when we talk to people about virtual ethnography, sometimes it's hard to wrap your brain around if you haven't done it before, like kind of understanding what it looks like, the back end. So first thing I want to do before I dive in to tips and tricks is give you an idea of what this looks like as a participant and also as a researcher. And so for the participant, it's pretty easy for them to engage. So they can use their phone, their computer, they can use their tablet. We usually specify a lot of times what we want them to use. So we'll often tell people to use their smartphone because it just allows them the most flexibility, especially if we're doing a home tour or something like that. They can carry us around a lot easier than like balancing the laptop and their webcam. But it's easy for them. So it's either they have an app on their phone or they're accessing the online platform on their other devices. And so what'll happen is after you've gotten everything set up, you're good to go, you've tested, you feel good, you invite all your participants to the platform. They get an easy link that they can click and they come in and they're able to set up a little profile and then they get started. One of the things that we do, and I'll go into this a little bit more in my tips and tricks, is we do a welcome exercise that has a little video to kind of like be like, hey, you've made it. Like, thanks so much for joining the study, and tells them a little bit about what the study is about. You can see me and the little welcome, one of the little videos. So I usually will do videos for all the exercises that I do. But what'll happen is they'll get in, they'll sign up for their profile, they'll look at the welcome, and then they'll start responding to the exercises that you've tasked them with. And they'll do it through video, through photo, screen capture, text responses. Again, I'll get into this a little bit in the tips and tricks. So we have some tips on specifying that to make sure that you get what you need from the exercises that you're having them do. So for example, if it's really important to you that you get video of their refrigerator, right? Like you really want them to get in there and show you all their condiments and show you the mess if it's my fridge, then you'll want to make sure you specify that they do video. That way you have what you're looking for out of that. And then as a researcher, I typically, you can access things, I think, from the app. I never do. I use actually like getting online and using my computer because it's a lot of stuff you're going to be looking at. But as a researcher, you and your team, you'll have logins. So, you'll share it. You can share it with your clients. You can set them up for client access so they can go in and see all these responses coming in live, which usually they get pretty excited about, which is nice. And so, but they have client access, which means they can't necessarily change things or accidentally make a mistake and delete an exercise or anything like that. So it's very safe access for your clients. But you'll log in, you'll start seeing responses. You see some here where you've got like video responses, depending on your platform. Revelation transcribes it for you so you can actually see and read what they're saying. You'll get all these great photos, all these great artifacts. And then while you're in there reading their responses, you can be communicating with them, asking clarifying questions and all of that. So one of the things I want to do real quick is I want to stop sharing this, and I want to just show you what the platform looks like, because I think it might be helpful, especially if you haven't done this before. And keep in mind, I'm not, this isn't a demo, but I thought it'd be helpful for you to see. So give me 1 second. I'm going to pull this up and show you guys what it looks like on the back end. All right, there we go. So this is what it looks like as a researcher in Revelation. So this is one of the, like a dummy study that is in here that I can kind of show you. But basically what you're looking at now is what the responses look like. And so you can come in after you've gotten your exercises and everything out there. You can look at all the images. You can sort things by participants. So if I want to see everything that Emily responded with, if I want to look by activity or the exercise, like I can go through and kind of see. So you're able to really easily kind of either look at everything holistically or dive in and really look at one participant. But then also I wanted to show you kind of what it looks like, because we keep talking about these exercises that you set up. So I wanted to take a second to show you what that looks like. And so here's a study that we actually did. We had a client who was interested in learning more about virtual ethnography, so we set up a little test study to let them participate as participants, and also on the back end showed them what it looked like with their answers. But here is one of the exercises. So this is a welcome exercise, right? So I'm gonna hit edit. And so this is what it looks like when you're creating it, right? So here's the little video of me where I've recorded myself, welcoming them to the study, telling them all about it. Here's some instructional text. And then down here for this particular exercise, I had asked them to upload a photo of themselves. But you can see, you can kind of build it. You kind of plug all the little elements that you want in. So you can put instructional text, videos, photos, all of that, and then you can choose what you want back from them in return. Do you want them to type out an answer, give you a link to a website? Do you want to request photos? Do you want to request a PDF file, video? Do you want to do a little survey in here as part of their response? So you've got a lot of options in how you can customize each of the exercises. And I'll give you some tips on things to think about as you do that in just a little bit. And then this is what it looks like for the participants if they're, it looks really similar if they're on their mobile device, but this is what it would look like to them if they were logged into a computer. So again, they see the video for me, they see all the instructions and information I want to share, and then they can just click a little button to add the photo of themselves. So again, you know, the purpose of this isn't a demo, but just wanted you to kind of see what the back end of that looks like. Give me just a second. And then, all right, let me get back to our PowerPoint. All right, so hopefully everyone can see that. All right, so let's go back to tips and tricks on, so you've kind of seen what it looks like. We've talked about, you know, how when you're in the back of these platforms, what it can look like. So let me talk to you about tips and tricks if you're doing a virtual ethnography. And so this is just stuff, like we said at the beginning, that Jen and I have learned over the years of doing it. We've made a lot of mistakes and we've learned a lot of lessons. So we're going to share that with you so you don't have to make the same mistakes. So when it comes to exercises, these are the key to a successful study. And so the way that we approach it is we design custom exercises for each of the studies based on what it is we're looking to learn, right? So we have some, you know, go-to, you know, exercises that we know work well, but we'll also customize those based on the objectives of the study. And then a lot of times we're creating brand new exercises for the study. And so when you're thinking about your exercise development, one of the things that you definitely want to do is include an easy and fun warm-up. And the reason for that is, for some people, this is the first time they've used a platform like this. So you're going to want to go in and help them kind of get used to it. So you want to kind of give them something fun that they can do so they can get used to taking videos and uploading them, or taking photos, or responding by text. And so kind of gets them used to using the platform. Another thing when you're developing exercises that's important, and this is a mistake we made in the beginning when we first started doing virtual ethnographies, we tried to put too many things into a singular exercise. So it's really important when you think of your exercise, you want it to be really focused, and you want it to be really clear what it is that you're asking the participant to do. You don't want to ask them to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? You want to be like, this is the thing or two things that I want you to do in this exercise. And you typically will want an exercise to take them no more than like 10 or 15 minutes. Because the thing is, you can have more than one exercise. Now, the exception to that is if you do a shop along, those will take a little bit longer because you're having them take you with them using video and everything as they're shopping at the grocery store and things like that. But typically, you just want to make sure you're not overloading a single exercise with too many things. You want it really clear, concise, and also just keep in mind they're most likely using their mobile device, and so you don't want to have too much for them to try to read and understand. When you think about your instructions, be really clear. Be really clear what it is you want from them. And that includes being clear about like the artifacts you want back, right? If you want a video, make sure you ask and request a video. If you want photos, make sure you ask for that. If you want a text response, make sure you ask for that. Just be really explicit in what it is that you're wanting from them. That way it's clear to them, and that way you're getting what you need to be successful in your study. Another thing on the exercise front that we really like is the daily diary question. And so we will have a question that we ask every day that's custom to the study. But like, let's say, for example, we're doing a study around travel and we want to they're planning a big trip. We're going to potentially want to understand every day, like, what did you do today? Did you go online and, search more about your destination, or just kind of have a daily diary where we have them tell us what they've done in regards to travel planning for that day, for example. And it, like I said, it can be different for every study that you do. And then the other thing when you're designing your exercises, you want to think about, is this an exercise that's better as an individual exercise, or is this an exercise that would make more sense as a collaborative exercise? And so it's most of the time, most of the exercises we do are individual, and so it's just private between them and us. But we definitely do find that there are some fun opportunities sometimes, depending on the study, to have exercises where they're able to see each other's responses and build on each other's responses. All right. Now, one thing that's really important about virtual ethnographies is they are not, like we like to say, set it and forget it, right? It is a very engaged thing that you have to stay engaged with it to keep your participants engaged. So one of the things that we get asked, I think I saw this question come through, is this something, like, our clients will be like, is this something we can do on our own, or is this something that, potentially we would want to hire someone to do? And the answer is, it depends. But one of the things you have to keep in mind when you're doing a digital ethnography or virtual ethnography is that it is pretty time intensive. So over that course of the 10 days or however long you have them in there, you're going to want to be checking in with them at least once a day, most likely more than that, checking their responses, making sure you're thanking them, you're responding to their questions. And so you're wanting to it's time intensive because you've got to be in there. And if it's 10 days and it includes weekends, you're going to want to be in there on the weekends and make sure that you're responding to things as they come in. Another way that we try to kind of build that engagement with the participant are those videos that I talked about. So we like to do a video for every single exercise that just kind of talks about it, explains what it is we're looking for, puts a face to the study. You could potentially get away with just doing the welcome video, but I'd encourage you to do a video for all of it, just because it makes them feel like, oh, wow, there's like a real human being. Sarah is on the other side of this. And it's been interesting. A lot of times we'll do virtual ethnographies to feed into potentially like an in-person summit or something like that. And it's, I feel like a rock star when people show up. They're like, oh, you're Sarah from the videos from the platform. So they definitely really they like it and they feel like they know you. And that's a really good thing, especially when you're, conducting research, is to build that rapport. So again, it's asynchronous, right? So like they're going in and responding whenever it's good for them, but you want to make sure that it's still moderated, that you're in there responding to questions and probing and thanking them and all of that. All right, so recruiting is something we get asked about a lot when it comes to virtual ethnographies. And it's something that, your exercises are really critical to a successful study, but also recruiting is really, really critical for a successful study. You want to make sure that you have a recruiting partner that is familiar with digital ethnographies, virtual ethnographies, understands what they are, understands how they work, so they can appropriately set expectations with the people that they're recruiting as well. And so we have found some good recruiting partners. I'm sure you guys have great recruiting partners too, but if you're doing your first virtual ethnography study, you just want to ask them, like, hey, what's your experience using platforms for virtual ethnography? Make sure that they feel comfortable with it. And another reason why it's good is that we often have our recruiters help us by getting into the platform and also kind of just monitoring participants and like making sure they're logging in regularly, making sure that they're completing all the exercises. So that's a great support to you as a researcher as well, to have a recruiting partner that's comfortable enough to hop in and help you in that way. Another thing that's important with recruiting is setting appropriate expectations, especially when it comes to the time it's going to take participants, right? So when you design all of your exercises that you're going to program into the platform, you need to take a step back and sit down and think through how much time it's going to take that participant. we typically find that for our virtual ethnography studies, we're at least asking for 15 to 20 minutes a day of their time. And so that's usually the combination of, sitting down and thoughtfully answering a daily diary, as well as completing one exercise a day. And so you want to really be realistic with your participants about that, so they know what to expect when they're coming in, and also so you don't get people who thought, oh, I thought it was just gonna be a couple minutes a day, and then you're not getting the robust answers that you need. So you really want to set those realistic expectations about what you're asking for. Again, the managing participation, have a plan. We tend to really like leaning on our great recruiting partners to help us. Obviously, we're in there as well, but they're a great support in that. Also, when it comes to recruiting for virtual ethnographies, you're going to want to have a bigger over recruit than maybe you typically would, let's say, for focus groups or other methodologies. The reason for that is just sometimes, you are asking for people to be engaged over a long period of time. And we typically, you could do this, for example, where you had a virtual ethnography and you just had one big exercise that you wanted them to do. All you cared about was them going and doing the shop along, and then coming back, and then that's it, right? Which we've used it for that, but typically we'll do multiple exercises over multiple days. And so you can have a higher drop off because things happen. Things come up in people's lives. They thought that they could commit to doing, 7 days of exercises, but then, reality hit and they couldn't. So you just want to make sure you have a bigger over recruit than you typically do, just to make sure you're hitting whatever number it is that you're wanting to hit for the virtual ethnography. And then we've said this on multiple slides, I'm realizing, but you want to make sure you keep the platform open. We recommend for at least 10 days if you're doing multiple exercises. If you're just doing that kind of one and done exercise, I would give yourself maybe at least 4 days in a weekend. That way you can make sure people have time to do it. All right, so this is my last tips and tricks, and then we have one more slide, and we'll wrap it up and just have a great big Q&A and answer questions that people have. Another question that comes up a lot for us is, like, how do you handle reporting out when it comes to virtual ethnographies? And so we have learned, because one of the things that happens is virtual ethnographies, especially, let's say you've got 40 people in there over the course of 10 days, and they've done an exercise a day for 7 days out of that 10 days, it is a lot of data. You've got so much stuff. You've got great artifacts. You've got text responses, video responses. You've got a ton of data that's come in. And so one of the things that we've learned to help streamline the reporting is that you need to be collecting. This may sound like not rocket science to some people, but for, I think it's important to mention, because we definitely have talked to people that have had challenges with this. But you want to make sure that you are documenting and collecting as you go. And so one of the ways we like to do that is we kind of create a little dossier on all of our participants. So we'll say, all right, here is Everett. And we start from day one, and we'll have like a little Word doc that we have going, or sometimes it's Power, depends on what the study is. But we'll basically start gathering our notes on him, our thoughts on him, some of his artifacts, stuff like that, and kind of create a little dossier of him and his participation in the study. And you kind of almost think about that, like if you were going to go do an in-home and you have all those notes and photos and everything from your in-home, it's a similar approach to this, okay? So we're like creating all of our notes and photos and everything from our ethnography, and that'll make reporting on the back end a lot easier for you. Instead of having to go back to the platform and like dive in and start from scratch, you'll be very happy that you kind of had that daily practice of building your dossier on everybody. And then the other thing is leverage those artifacts. That is one of the best things that comes out of these platforms, is the fact that you have video, photo, great quotes, all kinds of stuff. And so make sure when you're doing your reporting for your clients, or if you're doing this on your own and you're sharing it with internal teams, make sure you're leveraging all that. Make sure you're including all those great photos. Make sure you're including, you can create little highlight reels out of the video clips of people, and make sure you're really leveraging that, because that's one of the things that's really awesome about virtual ethnographies and these types of platforms. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Jen. She's going to do our last slide, and then we're going to open it up and start answering some questions.
Sure. So, if it's not obvious to you now, after all we've said and shown you, you get so many different artifacts and great output from virtual ethnographies. Really, it helps. I mean, we love it because it really helps you build empathy for your consumers. We've used these artifacts anywhere, like Sarah said, from a video highlight reel to, printing out, collages of large scale photos that we've put on walls in ideation sessions, in-person ideation sessions, just so our clients can really get into the lives of the people that we've studied. So you really know who these people are. Their families, their pets, their kids. They give you the photos and videos, they introduce themselves, their hobbies. You really understand what they use. Obviously, they're taking photos and videos of the products and things that they like and they don't like, and frustrations that they're having as they kind of go through their vacation planning or cooking dinner or picking their kid up at school. And you also know how they feel. They're obviously sharing their opinions and their thoughts as they're going through their exercises, telling you how things can be improved. A lot of times we'll do, we call it gems and headaches. So how can this be improved, or what's really good about this product, to really highlight those. So you have all of that that information, but you also have it backed up with photos or videos as well. So we'll end on that note, but just know that we love, one of our most favorite reporting activities, I think, is reporting out on virtual ethnographies, because there's so much to work with, and you really get such a great feel for what you've just studied.
Awesome. All right, so we've got some questions that I see here in the Q&A, and sorry, I had to use my little, I'm very proud of my little question slide. I love this little dog. So, I'm gonna stop sharing, but I just wanted to show him off. All right, so let's look at some of these questions. So one of the questions we had is, how much time do participants need to invest during a day's exercise? I think that's something that we addressed. It of course depends on what the exercise is, but we typically plan to have a day's worth of exercises take about 15 to 20 minutes. That seems to be pretty doable. So that would be kind of our recommendation. But again, you might have something bigger you need them to do, which is okay, but just make sure that you're setting appropriate expectations. All right.
There's one, Sarah, on sample size I noticed.
Okay. Yeah.
We typically will do, I mean, it really depends again on your study, whether virtual ethnographies is the only research methodology you're using, or if you're actually supplementing it with in-home or in person with interviews. It really depends, but we've done, I'd say, what, Sarah, 30 to 40 people typically.
That typically tends to be where we land. Sometimes we need more, sometimes we need less, but that tends to be a kind of sweet spot for us.
And in terms of over recruit, I don't know if, I think somebody did ask, we tend to over recruit maybe by 6 or 8 people.
So if it's 30, we'll recruit 36 or 38 for 30 to complete. So it's a pretty hefty over recruit.
It's a pretty hefty over recruit.
There's questions in here about compensation, incentives. So typically, from our perspective, is that it's pretty much aligned to an in-person ask. So if you were going to do, like, have someone come to a 90-minute focus group and you have 90 minutes of digital ethnography exercises for them to do, it'd be pretty similar. We tend to not discount, we don't, we tend to be about the same. So that would be like your recruiters. So I wouldn't be surprised if you went to your recruiters and asked them to recruit for a virtual ethnography. Don't be surprised, and it's appropriate if the incentives come back right in this group, those types of things. Sample size.
There's a quick question about limitations on virtual ethnographies, and as much as we love them, I think, again, this is some lesson that we learned along the way. There are times where you feel like there's an exercise that maybe the responses could be more robust. And that's why we've started just routinely now, we add on a subsection of participants that we take into a 30-minute interview. We conduct those either by video or on the phone. And I think that really helps us, as I was saying kind of before, it helps us tie up loose ends. So if we feel like, exercise 3 was great, but we feel like there's some unanswered questions, we are able then to follow up on that.
Yep. We've got a question in here about daily workload for the researcher. So I am currently, a colleague and I are currently in a virtual ethnography right now, so I can answer that. So we have about 40 participants in a platform right now, and he and I are both probably spending about an hour and a half to 2 hours a day in there, sometimes more. And we just actually are wrapping up now. So based on my experience, I think that's a pretty safe, if you've got 30 to 40 people in there, you've got a partner in crime that's helping you kind of with it, I would estimate probably 2 hours-ish a day that you'll be in there checking responses, responding to things, and that kind of stuff.
And Sarah, on that same line, I'm sure I saw a question that asked how much is feasible to expect the participant, the respondent, to spend per day on exercises?
15 to 20 minutes that we recommend. So that's that, like if you're thinking about your exercises and you have a daily diary, so you'd want it between the two of them, maybe your exercise takes 10 15 minutes, your daily diary takes like 5 minutes maybe. And so that seems to be a pretty approachable amount of time for participants to spend in there. Someone asked a question about recruiting partners. We'll share our contact information at the end. I don't want to turn this into like a promoting anything kind of thing, but if you truly need help finding recruiting partners, we're happy to share who we use, but we'll just do that privately.
And Sarah, there's a question about a difference between a virtual ethnography and a video diary.
To us, a virtual ethnography is more robust. You can certainly use all these different, you can use platforms that do virtual ethnographies to do video diaries for sure. But the reason why for us, virtual ethnography is just more robust because it's more than just a video diary. You can do a video diary as part of it, but you can also do polling and co-creation and ideation, and you can do different types of photo responses, text responses. There's just more that you can do with virtual ethnography. So it's very similar, but we just feel like it's a little bit more robust. Someone also asked about screening for respondents, any challenges for older respondents. I can actually speak to this specifically because we've actually done a Medicare study. You'd be surprised, people that you think that you would go into it being like, oh, we're doing Medicare participants, that that they're going to have real challenges. They don't. They actually are really good with it. They're good with smartphones, they're good with tablets, they're good with computers. That's not everyone, but we typically have found that it's actually not as big of a challenge as you think that it will be. And that was a big learning for us because we went in with some preconceived notions that got proved wrong on what people were comfortable with.
And there was another question, I think, about the co-creation ideation terminology. Yes, that is essentially, you can call an ideation session a co-creation session. And the ones that were
differences, but it's very similar.
And the ones that we're referring to as part of these studies have typically been a virtual ethnography leading to an in-person. Obviously, this is all before COVID. But we did some community ideation as part of the sexual wellness study that was not in person. It was just online. And Sarah, do you remember some of those exercises we did? I think there was a question about a typical ideation exercise you might be able to do.
They're very similar to what you would do in person in a lot of cases, and you just recreate it in the online environment. That's one too. If you want to reach out, we can share and talk to you about what we've done. Zoe, you look like you had a question you wanted to.
Yeah, I think along with those, people have been asking about healthcare studies. So you've talked about Medicare, you've talked about sexual health. Anything different that happens in the healthcare kind of?
A lot of times, obviously depending on the healthcare study, you have different concerns, HIPAA, things like that. So that obviously is something you have to think about when you're doing research with patients. But just kind of like how we do all of our studies, everything's custom designed, right? So we don't just like plug. All right, we're done. Like we literally think through and custom design all the exercises. So you would have the typical considerations that you would have with any kind of patient research. But then when it comes to the exercises and stuff, they definitely will be different, but that's not to say that healthcare is the only one that's different. Like any of the industries that we've done studies in, our approach has been different all the way through. What else?
There was one about jobs to be done, which we love jobs to be done. So I was so excited to see that on there.
A jobs to be done question. She's got it.
And I think the virtual ethnography is completely appropriate. You could create really robust exercises around ideal solutions or helping them, give you a sense for the steps they go through if you're needing to generate a job map. whatever it might be. I'm happy to talk offline about it because I could talk about jobs for an entire hour.
Sure,
But
I can attest to that.
yes, she can, unfortunately. But anyway, I think yes, the quick answer is yes. It's a very appropriate tool to kind of put in front of something you might follow on with when you're studying with a jobs to be done lens.
There's a question here about how we've sold this to clients who are keener on the traditional quality. That's a good question. So actually, one of the things that we did is we actually did a lunch and learn with our client. We had a big client that was kind of, we talked about it. They showed a little interest, but they kind of, it's banking. So they were a little old school in how they approached it. And we did a lunch and learn. And we basically, that's that study I showed you where I was like, it was lunch and learn. So we had them go in, experience virtual ethnographies as a participant before the lunch and learn. And then they came in and we kind of talked to them about the methodology, very similar to how we kind of talked to you guys today. And then showed them what it looked like as a researcher. And it became something that, they were able to really kind of see the value in it. But I think what was really neat for them is actually being able to do it as a participant and kind of see what it looks like on the other end. Because they're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is easy. There's like an app. There's, so they were able to see that. So you're right. Sometimes it can be challenging if like they come to you every single study asking for a focus group and you're like, wait, there's other ways. So I think it would just be like roll up your sleeves, do a lunch and learn if you can, or just somehow, just really try to explain and show them the value of it.
Well, and I think along with that, Sarah, in terms of because the client loves the back room oftentimes, and they like to see what's actually unfolding real time. You can do that by doing what Sarah said, kind of giving them a glimpse as to what they're going to see. But we also every time give our clients logins, and that's really where they make a decision how involved they want to be. We've had some clients who are in there every day with us, rolling up their sleeves, looking at responses, asking additional questions. And then you have other ones who say, oh yeah, that sounds interesting. And then they never log on. I think the other thing I saw kind of in the Q&A was the real-time piece of it. Because there obviously is not a back room in the sense that a client can actually watch the virtual ethnography unfold in real time. They can go in and view the videos, or they can go in and respond to responses, but it is not, that's why we say it's asynchronous. It's happening on the schedule of the consumer, but we can go in and look and see what they've done. So it is different from that regard. I think, in COVID times, trying to do a remote real-time in-home ethnography is something kind of we're all trying to figure out, but that would be very different, I think, than what we're talking about with a virtual ethnography.
Someone asked a good question. I think it's cool to bring up because it can get you thinking creatively about virtual ethnographies. They said, have you ever sent written material, exercises, or products to taste to the home ahead of time? You can absolutely do that. And, one of the things that we really like to do in any of our online methodologies or virtual methodologies, we like to bring the physical to the virtual world. And so, yes, definitely you can mail out, especially if you're doing, something like a taste test or something like that, you would want to, but you can definitely mail things out to them that are related to the study, things that you want them to, we've done it where we wanted them, one of the exercises, sorry, I was looking to see if I had it, but I don't, but one of the exercises, we wanted them to draw something for us. And so we actually created worksheets for them that they could print out and use. And yes, definitely, that's a really good idea. And you can get really creative with that. And sending them things that they can use as part of the study. And that just kind of makes it even more real for them. And especially in our current times where so much of what we're doing is virtual and online, it's a fun way to like keep people engaged and make it feel more real. All right, what else do we have? Sorry, there's a lot of these questions we've already answered, so I'm just trying to dig through.
I think there was another question about how we give instructions. Are they just through video? And they're not. We give written instructions as well as video instructions. So obviously recognizing that people take in information differently, it's all how they want to do it. So we give multiple options within explaining what we want them to do.
We've got some people asking for our contact information. So let me just share, hold on. Let me share that slide. We can keep answering questions, but just so that's up. So yes, so it looks like we're getting close to the end of our time. So we are definitely sharers, which is why we do this kind of stuff. And so we've, talked to people through the Insights Association, like Jen says, we've taught, we've, spoken at colleges and stuff. We love to share. We're not, we're very open source in the things that we know and we've learned and stuff. So if you have questions, if you really are struggling finding a recruiter, I'm happy to share who we use and who we like privately, one-on-one with you. If you have any other follow-up questions that you want us to address or something you feel like we didn't answer, feel free to reach out to us. We're really more than happy to share. We also have a lot of stuff on our blog. So if you go to our website, which isn't on any of this, clearworks.net, you can, we have a blog there where we've talked about some of this stuff. I talked about, online tools and things that we've used. And so we're happy to share that and share the learnings in the spirit of just, helping our research community out there. Did you have other questions?
No, I think I just want to be respectful of everybody's time and of course yourself. So I think that's a great way to wrap it up. And thank you very much for sharing your expertise, your tips and tricks. By the number of questions that there's definitely resonated with everybody. So I really appreciate that. And I will also say thank you very much for everybody joining. I hope you found this valuable. I'm very excited by virtual ethnographies. I think that there's a lot more that we can do with this with the methodologies approach. So I certainly would encourage everybody to share what's working, what's not working. Like those things of mixing the virtual and the physical. I mean, I think that's incredibly important. We don't have to just think about it as virtual. So with that, we will wrap it up. But again, Sarah and Jen, thank you so much for a great session. And thank you very much to everybody for joining. Over to you, Rachel.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Sarah, so much for joining us today. If you had asked a question and it didn't get answered, you can email us at webinars@focusvision.com and we'll be happy to pass on your information. We hope to see everybody at future webinars. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.